A roamer, a rover, this whole world over. As
I'm a therapist. We have mentioned several times, and we'll be mentioning over and over again, those four words. What upholds your existence?
As happy as me, you'll never see.
Represent for the peaks. Represent for the streets.
Bob Embry coined this term. Bob Embry was a friend of mine. He was a poet, playwright, and a wonderful gentleman. One day, Bob, at the age of about 35 or 36, as I recall, was walking down a street somewhere in New York City, and he walked underneath some scaffolding, and some painters, several stories above him, accidentally kicked over a large can of paint, and it came down and crushed Bob's skull. He was in critical condition for a long, long time. I don't know how many operations he went through. I know he had some kind of a plate in his skull as a result of that. And he went through excruciating pain every day of his life because of this. And he refused to take painkillers because he was a poet and a playwright, and he knew he could not write under the influence of any kind of medications. He knew it wasn't him writing. So he went without any painkiller and lived each day with this excruciating pain. However, had you met Bob Embry, you would never have known it. You would never see Bob feeling self-pity, moping, dragging himself around, talking about his pain. He was the exact opposite. A happy, charming, delightful, talented human being who gave love to everyone freely. He was always there for people. Instead of needing so much from others because of his pain, he gave it all away. If he found out through someone else that you were in trouble or you were in trouble and you needed something, he'd be the first person to show up and make sure that you were taken care of. And he lived his life that way, and he coined this phrase, make every day a work of art. And Bob indeed made every day a work of art. The importance of that is to understand the juxtaposition of pain and happiness. Because all too often we think in terms of, well, if our life isn't going well and we're in pain or something is wrong, then we're going to just suffer that way, as opposed to accepting that those things will happen, as Bob did, and move right ahead with your life and still be happy. I met a wonderful actress named June Havoc back in the late 50s, and then I did some work with her in the 60s. June Havoc is the sister of Gypsy Rose Lee. The two sisters were made famous on Broadway with the musical Gypsy, which later became a movie as well. And June Havoc was a remarkable talent and a brilliant human being. And I did a radio show with her in Pittsburgh some years ago. And during the briefing with the host, she was talking with the other people who were participating, listening and asking questions about their lives, and they were describing all the painful things that they had experienced in life. And then they turned to her because they didn't know her, and asked her about her life. And she smiled and started telling stories, and you've never heard such war stories in your life unless you actually saw the movie or the play Gypsy, when she described what it was like to be a child performer under the control of a stage mother who was going to get them to the high ladder of success no matter what. She described so many horrific experiences in life, and at the end of it she said, I have gone through as much pain and suffering as any concentration camp victim, but I've lived, she shouted out. And I remember the impact on of that, and I just looked at her and said, yeah, she lived to be 99, by the way, and I'll never forget her mental idea of life. I've lived, and Bob Embry was the same. So the point is, no matter how it's said, we're going to all go through pain. The title of my autobiography is So Much Pleasure, So Little Pain. But when I think of it, it hasn't been little pain. I suffered 13 years of migraine headaches. I've been through some situations in life that I wouldn't even want to begin to describe. Just about losing my life several times, losing everything I've been through. But yet here I am, and I'm smiling. And Wednesday I began the celebration of my 76th birthday, and I've never been happier in my life. So in spite of all the pain and suffering, there is nothing really standing in the way of making every day a work of art if you put your mind and heart to it. If you actually think of it that way and plan it and do it, as opposed to it's just another day. Does that make sense? I mean, the actual idea of I am going to do the things I want to do to make today a work of art. And by the way, the language is important, as it always is, thinking of it as a work of art, as opposed to just saying, oh, I want to make it a better day, or this, that, or the other thing. But make it a work of art, going back to our theme always of being the actor. Being the actor. As your life is a script, and you are the major performer, as well as the author, director, producer, critic, and audience, making every day a work of art should be your primary theme throughout your life. So now we're getting it to another level, not just waking up each day and telling yourself, I want to make today a work of art, but make it a theme of your life. Just as the actor has to know what the theme of his script is, make your life's theme a work of art. Build on the theme. Begin your day, and this is important, to start your day in a real high, uplifting fashion. Because most of us started as a drag. We mope around, we feel tired, sleepy, we go for the coffee, and see how many hundreds of thousands of people walking the streets of Seattle with that coffee mug, you know. And start your day in an uplifting way. Do something to lift your spirits and get you going immediately. Stretching is one definite way of doing it. We're going to be doing breathing and stretching in a couple of weeks, but it's so fundamental to your being to begin by getting your body in motion. Don't wait for your body to wake up. Wake it up. And it's very simple to do. Stand in front of a mirror and start moving, as we did yesterday. I did this yesterday with 4 people, and each one experienced the same thing. Just start stretching your body, swaying, getting in touch with your body rhythms, getting in touch with any tightness, any soreness. Begin to stretch yourself entirely from head to toe. Reach, climb, twist, turn, rub, massage, mash. Get your body feeling alive. Hug yourself, twist, turn. Everyone do it just right in your chairs. You don't have to bother giving out to make it that much easier. Just really move around. Don't make this a planned thing, something that you start one place and go. Just choreograph your body like a dancer in a relaxed, easy way. Make believe you're some kind of a creature, an animal. You ever watch them stretching? They're wonderful. My wife Nan sometimes gets down on the floor on all fours and makes movements that I can't begin to imagine, and it feels so good. Hug yourself, twist. Oh. Stretch your mouth, your jaw. Okay, how does that feel?
Awesome. Better stand.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I wanted to keep you seated on purpose for this, in order just for you to also mentally to see what you're doing and to get the sense of what you can do. And all it takes is 2-3 minutes every morning. But here's the key to it. You must be consistent. That's the only thing that works. Very often people say, oh, this is fun, and they do it, they experience it. And then a week later you ask them, how many times did you do it last week? Oh, let me see, I think I did it twice. No, it really works effectively when you are consistent every single day. It layers on and it gets better and better and better. And your body almost calls out for it, urges you to do it when you start that way. Simple. Again, there's always no rocket science, just get your body going. Meditation or hypnosis. I do self-hypnosis every morning before I even get out of bed and start stretching. You get your mind relaxed. You get your body relaxed. You close your eyes and you meditate or do self-hypnosis. Get in touch with what you're going to do that day. Focus on making it a work of art. And then you go from there. Practice different forms of progressive relaxation during the day, one of which is the stretching. One of the others is breathing. We take breathing for granted. Unless we have some kind of a respiratory problem, then we run to the doctor to get some help. But other than that, we don't pay attention to breathing. How many people really stop during the course of the day and say, what is my breathing like? We don't do that any more than we ask ourselves what our language is like during the course of the day. So breathing is a fundamental thing that we should be concentrating on and focusing, and doing it in a way that will aid our overall plan for health throughout our lives. Because as we get older, and this is something most people are not told, but as you get older, you do begin to shrink. You actually begin to lose volume overall. And the lungs begin to shrink. It's not something you feel every day, but over the course of years, when you get into your 50s or 60s, your breathing becomes more shallow, and your lungs have actually shrunk. So you have to counter that. And the way to counter it is by being very aware of your breathing every single day. And there are a few basic breathing exercises you can do, one of which is the following. Everyone take in a deep, deep, deep breath. And at the top of that breath, just as you're about to exhale, breathe in a little more. Fill your lungs to capacity. And then exhale slowly, ever so slowly. And at that point where you would normally begin to inhale again, push out more air. Actually visualize a tiny pocket of stale air in your lungs and push it out. Do that several times and then go back to a normal pattern of breathing. And repeat that 3 or 4 times a day. Over the course of years, it will add up. And the benefits will be so great you cannot begin to imagine it. You will be able to counter that shrinkage, counter the shallowness of the breathing, avoid some of the respiratory problems that you would otherwise have, and you're also going to help regulate your heart that way. So it's a very, very simple process. Breathing in very, very deeply, and at that point where you would normally exhale, pull in a little more air, and then slowly exhale, and at the very end, push out a little more air. Okay? Simple enough? Incorporate fun things into your schedule of activities. Take breaks, go for a brisk walk, window shop, buy yourself a gift, listen to music, have a fine meal, find ways to add to the uphold of existence. Tucker gave us a foundation which included specific language such as the uphold of existence. And the most important question we can always ask ourselves is, what upholds our existence? Coupled with the theme of make every day a work of art, there's a powerful synergy there. And you in fact can do that as a meditative exercise every day. What upholds my existence? Not what improves it, not what should I do about this particular part of my life, but what upholds my existence, lifts it up. Ask that question every time you have a serious decision to make, or even a minor decision. Ask yourself that question every time you have a conflict in life. Focus on those simple words. What upholds my existence? We've explained that over a period of 6 weeks in different classes. And by the way, all of these always continue to interconnect. So we mentioned life as a script and being the actor. We mentioned the theme, the plot, the resolution. We mentioned every detail, and then each following week with a new subject, we bring in the same thing, because we're integrating all of these forces over and over and over again. Going back to the theme of looking at the floor as a mosaic of your life, who you are, and then bringing a stamping machine, a puzzle-making machine down on it, lifting it up, and then scattering all those pieces, we end up with 58 to 65,000 pieces, fragments of who we are. And our basic responsibility to ourselves is to integrate all of those forces together in order to make every day a work of art. And the way we do that is by acknowledging what upholds our existence. So always try to keep connecting these things in different ways. The uphold of existence is the most important question to ask each and every day. Because if we know what upholds our existence, then we can know what to do to make every day a work of art. I know that upholding existence for me personally is being healthy. That's number one. Above all else, if I'm not healthy, I cannot uphold existence. I cannot make every day a work of art. I cannot be loving to my family and friends. No. So I've got to recognize that that is my primary uphold of existence, my health. What else upholds my existence? Kindness. Being kind, being loving, being considerate, being thoughtful, helping people, giving. All these things that uphold our existence are what will help make our day a work of art. Human mathematics. Make an offering to someone, a good deed, act of kindness, inspired thought, without expecting to receive back. To quote the late boxing trainer Angelo Dundee, it don't cost nothing to be kind. How wise he was. Him and Bob Embry would have gotten along beautifully well. In fact, I'll bet they knew each other. Because that's what Bob did. He always made offerings to people, as I said earlier. If he heard on the grapevine that someone was in trouble, Bob would show up, be there for that person, make an offering without expectation. One of the big traps in our lives is we become bitter because we give and we don't get back in return, and we start bookkeeping. How much am I getting? How much am I giving? What is the bottom line figure? We do that in relationships, and it's one of the most deadly things in any relationship. I'll go so far as you go. I'll give as much as you give. I told this story many, many times, and it has an impact on me each and every time I tell the story. Dear friends of ours are having a difficult time in their marriage, and they called a special group, special meaning that a therapy group of closest friends getting together for an extended period of time to help work them through the conflict. And Jay and Cecily invited their closest friends, myself included, and my brother mentor, Jimmy Germano. And Jay and Cecily faced each other and started talking about their conflict. And after a few minutes, it got very, very heated. And then they really let loose tons of bad feelings that they had accumulated over a period of years, and really started to dump on one another in a vile way. And were kind of unsure where to go with this, because these were two people we both loved very dearly, and they both had their own agony, their own side to the situation. And finally, Jay stood up and screamed at Cecily, cursing at her. If you don't only go halfway with me, I go halfway with you. And both Jay and Cecily suddenly stopped, and Jimmy saw this as the perfect time to intervene. And he sat forward in his gather ye round position and looked at them and said, "Do you repeat what you just said, Jay?" I said, "If she'd only go halfway, I'll go halfway." And Jimmy looked at Cecily and said, "What do you think of that?" And she stopped and said, "I can go for that, yeah." And Jimmy, we both kind of on the same page with this. She goes halfway, right? Yeah, okay. And Jimmy sat back and looked at them. No wonder you're sitting here in such pain and misery, you jerks. And suddenly Jay realized he had been trapped. And Jimmy caught him perfectly. Jimmy said, "Take a look at your mathematics. You're thinking, both of you are thinking now, that if you give 50% and you give 50%, that's going to be 100. No, your 50 and your 50 adds up to about 12% if you're lucky. And it's even worse mentally, because what you're both saying is that you're both going to withhold 50%. You're only going to give 50 if the other one gives 50. And of course, Jay then turned around and said, "I get what you're trying to say, Jimmy. You're telling me I should go all the way, huh? If I did that, you know what would happen to me?" And then Cecily, of course, got, "Well, I know the same thing would happen to me if I did it." And Jimmy said, "Again, your mathematics is totally wrong. The reality is, if both of you were to take the risk and give 100%, beautiful things would happen. Even better if you gave 110 or 120%. But let's say you decide to do it and you give 110% and she doesn't, or vice versa. Well, in the process, you've at least learned how to love and to give, and you've recognized that you're doing your best. She's not there, or you're the one that's not there. You go on from there. That might mean you separate. But at least you have learned to give, not to play that numbers game. The numbers game prevent us from making every day a work of art. It really works that way. If I am unaware or unwilling to do everything I can do to be kind to those people I love, to my wife first and foremost, I lose that day. I'm the loser. And if I give consistently, you know what happens, of course, quite naturally, unless your partner, companion, is a very bad person, a very ignorant person, they're going to reciprocate. They're going to do exactly the same. Once you get that rolling, you suddenly begin to discover that all the goodies are flowing your way. And that, of course, adds considerably to making your day a work of art. So that kind of mathematics really are important. Plot. What upholds my existence? Building on that plot. What are my work goals for the day? Now, one of the sore spots with many people is work orientation. Even for people who love their work, who really enjoy it, it can still be a sore spot. Because we can be overworked, not have time for the things we need to do besides working, and the result of that is not making every day a work of art. So we've got to figure out how to make our work day more profitable on an overall sense. And I don't mean materially, but how we can get more from it and feel good about what we're doing. How will I achieve my work goals? What are your plans? Well, too often we don't have any plot to our work goals. We don't really know what they are. We don't put them down on paper. We don't see what that plot is going to be for work. And we've got to build on that. We've got to understand what the plot of a life is. If our theme is to make every day a work of art, then what is the plot connected to that theme? What are the beats? What are the different components of making that day a work of art? And your work responsibilities are part of it, just as your home responsibilities are part of it. So you've got to see the outline of that, the same way an actor sees the outline of his plot in a script. What obstacles do I face today, and how will I overcome them? If we know that there are problems that day, maybe you have to deal with someone who is none too pleasant. Maybe you have to make a decision that's a serious one. Do something you don't want to do. I had someone telling me the other day, a person who's in housing management, how he had gone out of his way to help someone who had rented from him, and the person couldn't pay their rent and wasn't honest with him, and felt very bad. He had to go to their place of business because the person was no longer answering the phone or responding to emails, and do something he didn't want to do, and kind of tell her that she would be evicted if she didn't pay the rent. And he was describing this in conflict within himself. It doesn't feel good. You have to do something you don't want to do. But areas like that, problems and obstacles in your day, do not mean that you should somehow not make your day a work of art. You've still got to overcome those things because they're going to happen. Just like pain is going to happen. You can't use that as the reason for drowning in bad feelings and pulling yourself down or pointing the finger at yourself. You've still got to make that day a work of art no matter what. Where and how will I interact with people? Any expectations? Of course, people play a major part in our plot. Each and every day, whoever we're going to interact with, interface with, exchange ideas, thoughts with, balancing that out, having a clear idea of the nature of our relationships with people in general goes a long way. And we should be doing a lot more in terms of improving our relationships with people and or eliminating relationships that are not beneficial, that do not uphold existence. Too many of us have a need for more friends, and we take on people who are really not friends but acquaintances, who we really don't have that much in common with, who we really don't have a good, healthy relationship with, and we sustain these relationships. In fact, we get so used to them that we assume that this is the way relationships are, instead of being much more selective and saying, at times, I've got to recognize that this is not working. It's really not a healthy relationship, and walking away from it. That sounds kind of brutal to some people, but I really believe that time is something that's very precious, and we shouldn't be wasting it, and we shouldn't be wasting it in negative relationships, or relationships that are just flat and not going anywhere. Confront those things. Now, if you have a friend and you're not getting what you need from that friend, sit down and talk to them about it. That's part of upholding your existence and part of making your day a work of art. Could be that that person will look at you and say, you know, I feel the same way. You know, and what can we do about it? And before you know it, you're liable to discover that you do have more in common than you realize, and you could be getting more out of the relationship than you are getting. But because you don't say that, because you just let it hang that way, you kind of accept life on those terms. And that's a big mistake. That does not uphold existence. The uphold of existence means exactly uphold, bring it up, lift it. Don't just leave it lie there flat. What are my creative objectives, and are they reachable? We should all have creative objectives as part of our daily activity. Every day should involve some creativity on some level or another. And for many people, this is not happening. So they go to work and they just work, and they come home and they go through the days the same way. There's no creativity. Our life should be devoted to living, loving, and creating. How many people here feel that they are creative? Raise your hands. How many people really feel they have creative? Are you all? Are we all using that creativity? That's really the question. Any day that goes by that you are not being creative, you are losing a golden opportunity. Now, sometimes that's difficult to do. I've never been busier in my life than I am now, and I'd like to have more time to be creative. I finished the first draft of a play this summer, and I want to get that play up and going. I want to see it staged, and I don't have the time. Does that mean I stop being creative? No. I keep working at it. I find the minutes during the day to go back to that play, scribble a few notes, go over one particular part of it, write some ideas down in terms of dates, times, and places when I can hope to set aside more time. Work toward it. You want to play some music? It doesn't take much time to grab the guitar or sit down at the piano, whatever you want to do. I got here this morning and I felt the need to be creative in some way, so I started singing. Life is just a bowl of cherries. Don't take it serious, it's too mysterious. You work, you play, you worry so, but you can't take your dough when you go, go, go. So keep repeating it's the berries and live and laugh at it all. So I had fun. I was creative for 30 seconds singing. You don't have to have a great voice to do that, do you? You don't have to have great talents to be creative. You could just be yourself and be creative, whatever that means to you. But just do it. Make it part of your work of art that day. Does that make sense? Again, I'm eliciting a response because it's important that you apply these things. It does help to sing that song, to do that little moment of fun, whatever it is that's creative for you, and get into it. That's going to change your day just as getting up in the morning and stretching will. All of these things add to your day. I want to go to the theme for a moment of language and that one word we've used often, leverage. In order to make your day a work of art, you've got to make sure the leverage is working that way. In other words, all of your actions have to pile on that scale so that at the end of the day, the weight of the day has been creative and loving and fun and meaningful, as opposed to a drag and it's down this way. So it's leverage, it's human mathematics. So every time you do something additional to add to your day, that adds to your leverage, to the math in your favor, as opposed to it going the other way, or staying like this. By singing in the morning, I'm adding leverage. By stretching, I'm adding leverage. By doing meditation, I'm adding leverage. By making an offering to someone, I'm adding leverage. All those bits and pieces begin to add up. Mathematics, human mathematics. Resolution. Resolve to love, to be loved, feel self-esteem, face life's challenges, and find peace. This is a universal theme. Pretty much, if you think in terms of what human beings want, to love, to be loved, feel self-esteem, face challenges, which are always going to be there, and find peace. Some people might add a little more creativity to that, a little more money to that, a little more sunshine, whatever, spirituality. But basically, this is a universal theme. Be redundant, to love, to be loved, to feel self-esteem, feel good about what you're doing, about yourself. Face the challenges that you're always going to have, and find peace. That is what adds up to the uphold of your existence and gives you the chance to make every day a work of art. Again, the interconnections of all of these is what you've got to see. Live in the now and be certain you have a now instead of just a past. In that regard, make every moment a work of art. I've said over the weeks, I'm repeating again, that so many people have read that book of Living in the Now. And I know many people who carry it around with them religiously. But often I see people who speak about living in the now but have no now. They're not happy campers. They're not really experiencing life as a work of art, either daily or through the course of their years. They're experiencing few days like that, and yet they're relating to working in the now. Well, it's fine to think about it and talk about it as an intellectual or philosophical or even a spiritual exercise. It's another thing to actually apply it and do it. As I said this morning, I actually sang that song, just as I did. It's the doing. You can't just be thinking about these things and saying, well, it's a good idea. That's great. No, that and $2.95 buys you a cup of coffee someplace. Meaningless. That only adds to your negative leverage every day. You actually have to apply all of these things daily and moment by moment in order to make them important to you. You have to have a now, and if you don't have one, create one, build one. If you have to start from scratch, it's okay. People do start from scratch. I've known people who've come out of prison after laying up in a prison cell for 20, 25 years. They hit the streets. They've got no now. They're dead in their tracks. On top of it, they got a criminal record, no job to go to, family probably not there for them. They got to start, look at the stark world out there and feel all the loneliness and pain and suffering that they've been going through for so many years in prison. They've got to build a now. And you can do that. But you have to be honest with yourself. If you don't have a now, don't walk around pretending that you have one and just creating those ideas in your mind and intellectualizing them. You actually have to do the things that will create the now. You have to do those little bits and pieces every single day to build on that. Again, the old story I told a couple weeks ago about my friend David. Him and his wife Gisela were in India, this wonderful ashram, living a blissful life, and David is bitten by some kind of a bug and comes down with something, I think they called it enteric fever. And the fever was 104, 105, 106 degrees, and he was in a coma. And Gisela wired me, there were no emails in those years, and told me about this, and she was desperate, and they told her that they couldn't move him, they were afraid of moving him, and he had to get somehow to Boston, where there was a hospital that treated this kind of fever. They had none in that part of India, but they were afraid to move him. And so he remained in this condition, very critical. And then after about 3 months, suddenly the fever broke, and they said, let's fly him out immediately, take the risk. And they did get him to Boston, and he was at this hospital for several months, and then was released from the hospital. And he came to see me, and he walked in the door, and I couldn't believe it. I'd known him when he was 16 years old, him and his brother Steve, and they were very robust, healthy, lively people. And the guy standing in front of me was a ghost. He looked as if just like, not just in terms of the features in his face and the weakness, but it was like a blank stare. There was nothing behind it. And he sat down, and I asked him how he was doing, how he was, and he just stared at me and said, I lost it all. I said, what do you mean? He said, the fever took everything away from me, left me with nothing. He said, I look at Gisela, my wife, I don't see anything but a human being there who I don't know. I don't feel anything toward her. I talk about the Thakur, my guru. I don't feel anything. I don't feel anything about anything. I feel like my soul was drained from me. Got nothing. And I sat with him for a few minutes and thought back on what I remembered about David. And I recall that he loved Bach very much. He would always play Bach. So I put on some Bach music and sat with him for 20 minutes and looked at him. I said, anything? And he looked at me with that same blank stare and said, I'm not sure. Maybe, I don't know. And then I asked him about his work. He worked doing engravings and wood carvings and things like that. He was an artist, a very gifted artist. And I said, did you bring any of your work back from India? And he said, I think Gisela brought some pieces back. I said, would you at least work on that? And he looked at me and said, okay. So what we did over a period of weeks and months was begin to rebuild the now in David with little things. And it took 8, 9, 10 months to get him up and going to the point where he was beginning to feel alive again. And make a long story short, they made it through fine.
From God's God's on board. Each day I dine from the Bering Straits to Palestine. This spring, this brook will ring the bell. No need of wealth, you're in God's hotel.
Rover, rover, this whole world over. Happy as me, you'll never see.
Represent for the world.
Rover, rover, this whole world over. Happy as me, you'll never see.
One should know though was Christ's motto, so do the same. Let heaven flow. No pills, no